Rough Trade is giving away a third of the first 3 months of the Rough Trade Club plus new music membership exclusively to 101 Part-Time Jobs listeners. Become a member of Rough Trade Club New Music and you'll receive the Rough Trade Album of the Month straight to your door every month on an exclusive vinyl pressing with bonus material. Club members have received exclusive pressings of albums from Sufjan Stevens, Sprints, The Last Dinner Party, English Teacher, and Over Mono, just to name a few, this past year alone. Sign up using the promo code CLUB101POD and you'll get Rough Trade's Album of the Month, Camera Obscura's Look to the East, Look to the West for a third of the usual price. By signing up, you'll be getting Rough Trade's exclusive issue of the album on opaque purple in a gatefold sleeve, plus a bonus CD containing 5 demos. Don't want the album of the month but still want all the benefits? Sign up to the standard tier using Club 101 Pod and you'll still get the first month free. You'll also get free shipping on all orders, 10% off at the bar and on secondhand vinyl in store, and exclusive access to sold out Rough Trade events. So don't hang around. Head to roughtrade.com/club and sign up with the code CLUB101POD. That's CLUB101POD and claim money off Rough Trade's Album of the Month today. This offer is for UK residents only. Do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
The headlines remind us daily the world is a dangerous place. The elites in charge say everything's fine. Stop noticing. But you know better. And your gut knows that time is short to prepare for a world that is 4 missed meals away from chaos. My Patriot Supply has helped over 3 million families become more self-reliant and is the company Americans trust to prepare. Go to MyPatriotSupply.com and secure their best-selling 3-month emergency food kits. Each contain delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, averaging over 2,000 calories per day. Secure at least 1 food kit for each family member. For a limited time, save $200, plus get free shipping on all their Ready Hour 3-month emergency food kits. You're not ready if it's not Ready Hour Foods. My Patriot Supply also has solar power generators, water filtration units, biomass stoves, heirloom seeds, and critical survival gear. Shop MyPatriotSupply.com today. MyPatriotSupply.com.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? I kind of like the high five, but if you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. At ChumbaCasino.com, choose from hundreds of social casino-style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses, so don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hey, you're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs. I'm Giles Bidder, and on this show, we hear from bands and artists about everything that goes into being a musician, all the different things they have to juggle, and of course, the number of side jobs that they've had in the earlier years before they were able to do music full-time. On today's episode, we got Jordan Rakei. The Australian come Londoner has just released his 5th album, The Loop, and it's an exit from the kind of digital sound we were used to hearing from him. He speaks on this chat about how it's more about the room sound and playing with a band. You can really hear the R&B soul. I'd call it quite like a sweeping, soaring sound on The Loop. And it's got all of these magic moments throughout the record that spin around your head and have their own kind of kinetic energy. So it was great to speak with Jordan just after the release of this new album. I learned a bunch of things that I never knew about him before. So hopefully you enjoy this episode. If you do, make sure you subscribe to 101 Part-Time Jobs. We put out 2 episodes every week, sometimes more, and we've started filming them too. You can go to our YouTube and see interviews with the Staves and with Neil Finn from Crowded House, and lots more to come there. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you're good. 2000 Trees is a brilliant independent festival in Cheltenham, just a few hours away from London on the train. If you're into guitar music, from folk to heavier stuff like punk rock and metal, 2000 Trees is the festival to go to this summer. 10th to the 13th of July, the Gaslight Anthem, the Chats and Don Broco are headlining, Manchester Orchestra, Bob Vylan, Frank Turner and the Sleeping Souls, Creeper, and so many excellent bands. If you want to head to 2000 Trees and spend a wonderful weekend in the sun, hopefully in the great British countryside, 2000 Trees is the one. Get your tickets now from 2000trees.co.uk, and when you use the voucher code 101pod, you can get 50 quid off your weekend ticket. All right, it's 101 Part-Time Jobs, and here's Jordan Rakei. 101 Part-Time Jobs.
Some of my childhood memories where the studio to me was my safe sort of haven, because my house was like crazy social. We had all my brother's friends over, my family friends. There was always parties going on, and I would sometimes go to the studio making beats on Fruity Loops, and that was like my way to escape, because I wasn't like an outward extrovert. I was the little awkward boy in the corner of the room. So the studio was my my safe place.
Your way to feel like you're kind of involved in a way, because you have a job.
I mean, yeah, exactly.
And your job is to make stuff which you can then show to the party.
Yeah, it's to weirdly pour your heart and soul out in private and then have to annoyingly share it with other people.
How was your journey like that? Do you have a specific time or a specific memory where you played someone your music for the first time and how that felt?
It wasn't the ideal start for me, because so there was when I was 11, I made beats with my brothers for like games. Like it was like a game. We played Fruity Loops, who could make like the fastest beat. You know, we had 10 minutes. It was like a competition. We'd share it with our parents and like, you know, that sort of thing. So that was like fun. But I remember back in the early days of YouTube, I like made my own song and uploaded it. Didn't tell anyone, and my brother found it. And he blared it on the speakers and like locked me out of the room. And I was like, and I'm an anxious, crazy like introvert. I was like panicking, like open up, turn it off, and like it was a stressful. Actually, the early stage of my like whole music development was very different. And, you know, I never let my parents come and watch me sing at school, and I didn't tell anyone I sang. It was a much more like solitary experience. And then as I grew, it became like I realized they should celebrate with me like all the good things that happened along my career, but it was very much like a secret. It was sort of like my own little secret until my brother found it and destroyed everything, destroyed my identity.
Completely against your will.
Yeah.
Lots of people have it where you start making music or you start being creative, and the idea of it being a secret is a very powerful thing. And that kind of lightning in a bottle golden feeling is also kind of going along with the idea that it's terrifying. You know, what if someone judges you? You know, just the idea of sharing it for so many people at the start of their music journey is just a completely paralyzing, terrifying idea.
Yeah, that's the thing. you forget, like, it's so personal. I mean, my earliest original songs are quite funny because they were like, you know, I think the very first song I wrote lyrics for was about Tiger Woods and my love of golf. And I'm sort of rapping, I'm sort of singing. And I remember just being so proud of like the rhyming, but then I was so embarrassed when it was heard, you know, like I was like 12 and I had recorded it on a little interface I had going into my computer USB mic or something like that, and like made a little beat. And it was sort of like my own little secret. And then, but I was just proud to listen to it. And then it got on a CD and it got shared around like the friendship circles, and it became like old school viral, you know, like it was going around the picnics. And and then because the thing is, my parents are so proud of sharing it, but I was just so awkward and shy, and so it was in a weird sort of convoluted way. Maybe part of me liked that people were hearing it, but a lot of me was not up for sharing it.
And that's part of the job. I mean, it's fascinating to me how something so pure, something so honest can be coupled with such a terrifying feeling of awkwardness. And, you know, 101 Part-Time Jobs, that's the name of this show. I speak to people about all different kinds of jobs, whether it's working at Sainsbury's or Waitrose, or whether it's working a full-time job, or if it's the work of, okay, how do I make myself, push myself to bloom into the person that I want to become? One of those big jobs is being comfortable and open to the idea of sharing music. That's a whole massive job.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, it's still a journey I'm currently working through on a 9-to-5 basis to become comfortable.
I mean, that's surprising. You know, coming up to your 5th album, you're an objectively successful musician. It's very, I think, comforting, really, to hear someone like yourself still say that you're still in that journey of becoming comfortable.
I think it's because I'm currently in a change where everything is becoming more personal, like my lyrics or like my music, the actual music, so like the chords, the influences. And so in a way, it's like revealing the curtain a bit more to me, because in the past, like I'd be this producer that sort of sang, or I'd be like a writer for other people or collaborate. But now the new music is sort of like, I just want to be a bit more real. I'm not up for sort of hiding behind metaphors or anymore, production tricks. I just want to say how it is a bit more. So with that comes the more uncharted territory of like a really strong, deep lyric on my new album, and now people are going to hear it, you know. And the same sort of thing back to my Tiger Woods song. It's like, I love this song. I'm so proud of this story it tells of me. But now I'm like, oh God, people are going to hear it. You know, people are going to hear about my life and maybe ask me a question about my childhood or whatever. But I also embrace that. It's nice to sort of vent to everyone, air my dirty laundry.
So what was the first time that you actually put action towards saying and doing, I'm going to be a musician, I'm going to prioritize music over school, over family or relationships or location?
Funnily enough, it wasn't even me. It was actually my parents that pushed me to do it. I was working at a supermarket. I was going to study engineering, like structural engineering, because I was good at maths. And my dad was like, and I was also going to join the army. I went to like a career expo, and the army person was like, you can make $40,000 a year and you can get to work out and be muscly. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then I told my parents, I was like, I might sign up to the army. And they were like, you should study music. You're so talented. Listen to all this music you made. But again, it was still my little secret at that point. So from their sort of gentle pushing, I did a music, sort of like a college degree. It wasn't like a big, you know, famous school. It was just to study music, learned covers, joined ensembles, that sort of thing, like learn the grassroots of it all, like book your own show sort of thing. And then from there, I was living the double life of like working in a supermarket, doing the night filling the shelves, and then like studying in the day, doing my like just classic 3-year course, bachelor's. And it was only in around the second year of my bachelor's, one of the teachers was like, you write, like your music's very interesting, actually, you should like seriously pursue this. He said a lot of people do this course to like fill the time, because out of nowhere someone will get an office job and they use it as like a like bridging gap between like accepting reality that they have to get a normal job, whereas like it's rare for him to see someone that has potential to be a musician, which I found so interesting, a teacher telling me this, because like I really appreciated the raw truth, you know, of that. And that was when I was like, maybe I should do this for real, you know, maybe I should start trying to sing in a pub to get money instead of working in a supermarket. And that was when the transition started happening. I had to turn down some night shifts, and then I had to sing at a pub to 20 people, not even a lot.
Great that your teacher took it upon themselves to that, because you got to be lucky to have a good teacher.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. It was my parents, and then it was my teacher that said, you should try this.
It's all the people that shouldn't tell you to do that normally.
yeah. It's funny now, like, even now, my managers are like, we're going to go do this big thing next year. And I'm like, really? I don't feel like I can. And maybe it's like a self-confidence thing, but I'm just sort of so in the moment of, like, I never think of it as this big aspirational career. I'm just sort of making it. I release it, I tour it, and then I make another one, I release it. And that's funnily been my journey from those supermarket days of like finishing a night shift, waking up the next day, making music in the day was just sort of for fun. And then I went to a night shift, and that was like my life for 3 years. And yeah, that's sort of where it all really started, in the middle of university.
We live in a time when I think traditionally we kind of grow up reading music books and watching music documentaries and listening to interviews on the radio, and these people always seem so confident. You know, the idea of a rock star, the idea of a star is so much ingrained in what we think of musicians. Do you think that right now we're kind of coming into a time, whether it's kind of like that Gen Z approach and the fact that everyone's talking about mental health a lot more now, that it allows musicians to be more vulnerable?
Yeah, I've definitely. That's a good point. And I think also because people have direct access to their fans, even if you're an upcoming artist or a big artist, you feel like you can be more immediate. You're right there. You can tell that person in a click of a button, hey, I'm dealing with something, writing, this is hard, I get stage anxiety. You know, you can talk about anything as a musician, because in the past, maybe people were voicing that to their team, but then it would go through a press agent and then it would be released as a statement. There was sort of like blockades along the way, but you can just chat directly to your fan base now, and it feels quite liberating, actually. I think also, like you said, the Gen Z thing about people accept, there's like more of an acceptance of mental health issues, especially in the music industry, and like there's more of an awareness. Even 10 years ago, like, I found it weird, you know, I was the only person I knew that meditated, or, you know, something like that even. And then you meet everyone in London's meditating now, and they got their own mantra, and they're sort of like got a spiritual practice. And this is really nice. It's sort of nice evolution of like, it could just be an age thing, but it could also just be like people are becoming more savvy with trying to help themselves in like a tricky time.
How did you get into meditation? How did you discover it and then kind of make it part of your routine?
I was watching one of my friends perform, and I remember he walked out. I remember this so vividly because this was sort of like the beginning of a new Jordan. But he walked out on stage and he was just looking around the room, like soaking in the room and like digesting, basically being like extremely present. And I remember asking him, I was like, what was that about? Like, because I walked on stage, I was really shy. I would like have my head down. And he said he's just soaking up the energy. He's like, every room is different. He's just getting, he said he had been practicing meditation since he was a child. He was raised in like a Buddhist family. And he told me about a couple of different techniques like Vipassana, which is like, you know, breathing, really simple breathing based one. And I was like, I'm going to try it. So I started Googling it, and people say you can use it to, you know, overcome phobias. And so weirdly, my beginning journey of meditation was through actually trying to overcome like a bird phobia I have. It's really abstract phobia, which is like a bird phobia, which is like, it's so funny. I'm not scared of birds if I see them, but it's sort of the erratic nature of a bird that I can't quite handle. And when you like basically equalize your nervous system through meditation, you get like less pangs from, like you're triggered a lot. It takes a lot more to trigger you in a way. So I was reading about like phobia help with that, like, you know, sort of calming your nervous system down. And the beginning of that, I didn't realize how much it would change everything for me. But, you know, it just taught me a lot about focus, a discipline, a bit of a routine, and then I connected to myself a bit more like spiritually, and then I like dived into my past. I just reflected more. Like I realized like the world, you sort of just feel like you're on this journey with the world and you're just going along with the flow of things. But when I started meditating, I could see things a bit clearly. I could see if I was in a mood, or I sort of told myself, I called it my mental shower. Like every night I would just sit there and just clean myself of the day I just had and just take note of what happened and not attach myself to anything and just be like, there's another day tomorrow, you know? It's just for going with the flow.
Is that your mantra?
Well, it's funny because I have done those sorts of affirmation-based meditations where I would say, I'm grateful to be a musician. I would say that for 20 minutes. But I've had many different mantras and styles, but I think now I just sort of call it giving myself time is the simple way of, because I've been doing it for like, I don't know, 12 years now. And I'm just glad if I ever manage to give myself that 10 to 20 minutes, I'm just grateful I was able to fight against the resistance, because it's so hard to actually sit there when so many emails need to be done, or my toddler's playing, or I don't know, anything like that. It's like trying to find that time for you is really hard. But it's sort of like when people talk about working out, they don't want to do it, but once they've done it, they feel so good. It's the same thing with me. I'm just so grateful when I've done it, but there's that little fight inside being like, do I have to, you know? So I still get that to this day.
Doing lots of emails and looking after your little one. I mean, we mentioned just before how the music industry has changed and the role of a musician has changed. You have a team, don't you? You know, you have a management team, you have a booking agent, but there's still a lot of jobs that you do. There's still a lot of roles outside of simply making music.
That's a good one, actually. And I'm actually at fault sometimes forgetting about those other roles that like need nurturing. Even like this is more of an abstract concept, but like being a son to my parents. And like sometimes when I'm really busy, I don't text, you know, I just don't touch base. I'm just on a zone, like I'm trying to record, I'm just having so much fun. Or even so there's sort of the son, there's the husband element, which when I'm in a zone I can be pretty average at, because I'm riding that wave of like, you know, pure dopamine in the creative phase. And being a father, so to be honest, the hardest job I'm still managing is like being a present father, but being a active, driven musician. I find that balance really hard, because to be a present father, you need the time. You know, you need to spend time with them and like block out a nice solid chunk here and there. But being this like musician that wants to really succeed, well, I don't even know what that word succeed means yet, but it's like, I feel like, you know, I've got to work so hard to get something. You know, like I've had so many days where I've been in the zone and it's like 5 p.m, but I've got to go to nursery to pick my son up. And what I always struggle with that. I'm like, I never get these. When I was a non-father, I would just ride that wave, you know. But now I just say to myself, like, I think my future self would be thankful that I spent more time with my family and my son. No matter, like, that song can always happen, whereas your son will only be a toddler once, you know, that sort of thing. So I just keep trying to think about that. And I love being a father. Like, that job is amazing. And I also love being a musician though. And I also love all those other elements of like playing with my band and being a good friend and spending time with them separate of my family. It's like really hard to balance everything, trying to be the perfect everything.
Yeah. And now's the time for it. I don't know anyone who isn't rushed off their feet. It goes hand in hand with being in a digital world.
The thing I keep reminding myself, especially with all these multi roles or jobs to do, is at the end of the day, like, there's a common concept they talk about in like therapy called the stress container, or the fun bucket, or whichever one it's called. But you need to serve yourself so that in a way it can seed into the way you are around your child, for example. So if I am just being the full father mode and not really serving the fun side of the musical exploration, then there might be a small part of me that resents not having enough time to do the things I really love as well. So finding that balance of, sometimes I think like I'm overloaded with the roles I have to do, and even connecting with fans, and I just think like, what does Jordan really need to do today to be so that I can be a better person for everyone else?
And quite often you don't know what you want.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't. But I think my favorite thing to do is being in the studio alone, just like exploring, and because it takes me back to those childhood days of escaping the chaos of my household and just getting in my little safe haven and just controlling my own destiny, if you know what I mean.
When did you move over? How old were you when you made the move?
So I moved over 10 years ago now. So I was 21, and I moved over with no plan. So like I finished university, I had saved up loads of money from my grocery store work.
Yeah.
And
smart boy.
I was just I just basically I lived with my parents. All I was doing was like working at night, going to university, and then like playing basketball with my friends and making beats. And then I was like, I had all this savings, and I was like, I'm going to try the London thing. I'm going to try the relocation thing.
Had you known people to do that? Like people at your school, had they done London?
No one. I knew no one. I also knew no one in London either. I just was like, I had heard a lot about the music scene and how it was a bit more aligned with my style and taste. And
is that like jazz? Is that kind of...
Yeah, especially at that time, jazz, soulful stuff. Because that had a weird resurgence at that time in like 2014. Because it obviously has been around for years, but at that time, like so many great albums were coming out and people were like getting into it again. And
Giles Peterson is a good voice. Giles Peterson introducing lots of people to new stuff from that.
Yeah. And he actually played me on his show, and I was like, I'd never got radio play before. And then I was like, oh, maybe there's people in Europe and UK that want to have a listen to my music. So I just thought I'd take the leap. Yeah.
And do you remember your first day in London?
Yeah, I do. I lugged all of my gear on that horrible train journey from Heathrow all the way out to, I was staying in East Ham, which is actually like Zone 4 on the east side. Yeah. And then I just got a couple of my favorite albums, and I just walked around Oxford Circus and Soho for like 3 hours. And I just was like, I can't believe I'm here, because it was Christmas time. So all the beautiful lights were up, and I was walking around the river, and it was freezing, and I just come from boiling hot summer Australia. So it was such a culture change, and I was just so excited. I just remember being like so happy and
brave.
Even walking on the tube. Yeah, I felt a bit out of my element, but I'm ready to conquer the UK.
So have you found your places? Have you found your coffee shop and your roots and your wake up morning walks?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. It's funny because I've lived in different areas. Like I've lived in East and South. But yeah, my favorite places in London are probably South London, just the greenery mixed with the cool sort of creative scene, and the music scene's like buzzing down there. But yeah, I've got lots of my favorites. I feel like I'm well and truly like integrated into London now. It's part of my makeup.
This record, it does sound kind of... Okay, I'm gonna sort of fall into some traps here by sort of saying genre wise, so I'll try to avoid that. But it's quite soaring. It's got a lot of soul to it. There's kind of an explosion of colours. If that's kind of synesthesia kind of way. Have you noticed that? Yeah,
I think that's a good point. It's funny because I am I would say generally, because sometimes my music is different genres, but generally I'm a soul artist. But this album particularly is sort of leaning more into, I guess, what I would call like the foundation of soul, like the original soul sound, like the stuff from the 70s, which was what I was really like inspired by, like all the Motown stuff and Stevie and like basically all my parents' music they used to play. Whereas some of my other albums are maybe a bit more like modern R&B or like soul in a more of a hip hop way. But I would say generally, definitely. And because what I was trying to achieve was like, you listen to those old classic records and they just feel so expansive. Something about them just feels so dense. And my last album, I guess it was sort of like a rebel against my last album, but my last album was like very produced, like lots of synthesizers, very like in the computer, in the box. And I wanted to make something that just sounded like natural and huge with all acoustic instruments. That was sort of like one of the many rules I set myself. So when I went to the recording process, I just kept thinking to myself, like, is that a human playing? Like, can you hear the mistakes? Can you hear the room? And through that sort of that sound, that informed that more classic soul thing. So yeah, that's a well observed.
We live in a time now where people aren't really counting albums as much as they would do. I mean, I know I mentioned earlier your 5th album, The Loop, but really, like, we live in a time where you can keep on releasing records. You can release mixtapes as someone who's not a rap artist, and it's like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
When in terms of your kind of attitude and your perception of how you write songs, develop songs, play with the band, and then release them, have you found a kind of particular way of thinking that suits you best? So do you think in album terms, or do you think in song terms, or yearly band, who's in your band at the time terms?
I generally think when I've finished the whole campaign, like I have an album coming out and then I'll probably tour it. After all that, I sort of think about the whole next album and project. I think about, firstly, like I set these little new rules or objectives, like for example, this objective was like, I want it to sound acoustic, humans in a room. So I like to think of the whole picture. And there's more of like a generalized rule, but it can be quite ambiguous. And then I stick pretty strongly to it. Even though I haven't written anything, every song I write is informed by those sets of rules. So I do think on like a project by project basis. It's part of the way I naturally work, which is quite logistical as well. I'm not one of those like creatives that get inspired and they go into the studio. I'm very much like every day I will, because I have a child now, it's hard to get the time. So when I have the time in the studio, like it's like work, I'll try and get something out of it each day. Rather than like waiting for inspiration.
I love that idea of it something being ambiguous, but at the same time you're trying to kind of define it without pushing it. You know? It's like you're trying not to look at it, but you want to look at it.
It's hard because you don't want to like pigeonhole yourself so early in the process. I find having some parameters quite helpful because I'm so multi-genred and I love so many different approaches. It's nice for me to have a rule set because then it tames the crazy mind that I have. Otherwise, I'd be like, I'm going to put that synth in that song. I'm going to do a beat. And then if my original rule was like no synths, no computers, then automatically it rules out so many options.
Right.
So it's really helpful to set those parameters early on for me.
Jordan, thanks so much for being up for this chat. I love hearing your stories.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's nice to reflect back on the good old days.
Yeah, it's reflection, and everyone does it differently. Everyone goes about being an artist differently, and that's something that I didn't really think too much as a kid. As a huge music fan, it took me at least until my late 20s. I'm like, oh, there are different ways to think about music, releases, albums, bands. Yeah,
it's true.
It's a beautiful thing.
We're all just on our own little journey through this thing. We all have, one piano, but we use it so differently and we tell different stories. So I'm just keep being grateful for like, this is my job, circling back to the jobs thing. I'm very lucky to have this job.
Well, I got one more question, which is to give some background. I've always cocked up at my jobs, whatever jobs I've been working at. I've smashed glasses as a waiter. I've lost kids when I was supposed to be looking after them. I've kind of replied all as many times as anyone could or should. I've got to ask, what are your biggest work gaffes? Work mistakes?
Shit. I would say I've had a couple. So I used to work at a company, this is back in the day when I was like 19, where we used to waterproof phones. And that was my role. I was the guy that put the phones in the little massive machine and like shut the lever and waited 30 minutes and like prepped the next phone. But I accidentally had put like 12 new Samsungs into this. They hadn't been treated yet. Basically, I destroyed 12 Samsungs before they had the waterproofing thing. Anyway,
where were you working? Like a scuba diving course?
No, it was like a weird new nanotechnology where like actual phones could be dropped in water. It was mind blowing. Now lots of phones have this, but at the time it was very ahead of the game.
New to me.
And then another thing, when I worked in the supermarket, like I've broken a whole pallet of wine because they stock alcohol in Australia in supermarkets. So yeah, I've just dropped the whole wine, and then I nearly lost my job, but I'm glad I kept it.
So there was Jordan Rakei here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. I hope you're all good. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the show. That means so much for us. It means that we're able to get bigger guests and continue doing this show at a higher and higher level each time. So thank you if you're able to subscribe and rate this show. If you're in a band or if you play music, DistroKid is the best place to get your music heard. You can put out your album or EP or single. Head to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod to get 30% off your first year at DistroKid and join 1 million other artists in putting out your music on Apple, Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, all of that. So if you know someone who's in a band, maybe a nephew or a niece, a colleague, or maybe even a boss who you want to give a tip to, they can put out their own music on DistroKid and they can get 30% off their first year by heading to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hey, podcast listener. Do you love talking about movies, music, TV, comics, and games? Then you should be listening to The Great Pop Culture Debate, back and bigger than ever for Season 9. This season, the panelists discuss the best James Bond film, the best Elton John single, the best Nickelodeon original series, the best Batman villain, and so much more. Find the show wherever you listen to podcasts, or head to greatpopculturedebate.com. More than 100 topics are already available. Subscribe today.